Vietnam didn't end back in 1974. The 58,000 names on the wall are not all the casualties. They called it a war and said we lost it.
If it takes 1 million lives, if it takes 1 million years, the Vietnamese are prepared to fight forever. That's a hard person to defeat. You can kill them, but you can't defeat them.
You know, Nam is not a place. Nam is it's a palatable thing with texture, and it's something that you can actually reach out and touch in your dream.
I felt duty-bound or honor-bound to participate in my country's conflicts.
It's been nearly 20 years since my return from Vietnam. Many of us who survived Vietnam physically have remained deeply scarred emotionally. It is estimated that some 60,000 veterans have committed suicide since their return, and over 800,000 have some form of post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. They are truly the walking wounded.
Coming down and looking down into the jungle and seeing streams and mountainous terrain, just a beautiful wild countryside, and thinking, am I going to be traveling through that, walking through that? And then next into Vietnam, into Bien Hoa, out of the plane, and it was a heat.
It was clearly an introduction to a different world. The odors were different, the sounds were different.
And it's like the Twilight Zone. You step into another world. And I remember the strong feeling of really feeling like I'd stepped into the 6 o'clock news. When we got off in our stateside utilities, we looked across the tarmac, and here's a like number of people that I thought were mercenaries. All in camouflage utilities.
I remember their eyes were, they looked old. They looked real old.
Do you remember what their comments were?
Oh, just good luck, new meat.
We're all kids. This was all new. I mean, it was still just John Wayne until you took that first round.
You load a soldier into a body bag. I think that's when the real impact of where you are comes home.
Things happen incredibly quickly, and you sort of go into a fight or flight sort of state of incredible strength and seemingly an ability to hear and see everything, but you get real focused on survival.
The people that I went over with as a unit, we were very close together. We spent a lot of time together. A lot of close friendships were built up. And so we were like brothers there then.
When you're brothers in arms, that bond is more powerful than blood.
There were two guys, Speedy and Romo, were two guys that were just really tight, and they're the ones I think of who almost became one person. They were so close that everybody knew them sort of as by one name, Speedy and Romo. It was not Romo and Speedy, or it was not Speedy, or it was not Romo, it was Speedy and Romo. And you didn't say one without the other. You
knew more about them than you did about your own damn family. You knew what they were made of, and you could depend on them. It's when people like that start getting whacked and they're removed from your life. And then there's these holes that are created. Well, the Army says you got to fill those holes, and they send somebody else that's just as qualified. It's when that FNG shows up, I always kind of felt sorry for the guy.
I didn't get to know him. I didn't want to get to know him. I never knew if they were going to be around. To this day, I can only remember the men that I went over there with, their names. The ones that came in later, I cannot remember any of their names.
It was kind of funny because I was called an NFG, a new freaking guy, and everybody kinds of shuns you because, you know, you're a greenie and you don't know what's going on. And so you're kind of alienated from the rest of the group. And you had to earn your way in order to be welcome or feel part of the crowd.
And all of a sudden, you wind up with a team that's not really a team anymore. It's just 7 or 9 guys doing the deed at night, and that's it.
Romo got killed, and Speedy got killed too. I mean, he was alive, but...
This one guy, particularly, his name was Pooch. He was a good man. He was helping the other new guys adjust to the Vietnam way of life, and always volunteering for Point Man, you know, doing some John Wayne styles. And he had just got back into the country from Thailand, I think it was. And he had all his pictures of these girls that he had up there and bragging about them. But he was quite the man. And the first thing he started hollering if he was going to be okay to the doctor, not knowing that he was missing his bottom parts. It would never have that be a man again.
We had a sergeant that was hit, and when medevac come to pick him up, we had cut an LZ, a landing, what we call a landing zone, and we couldn't cut it wide enough for the chopper to sit all the way down, so they dropped the cable. And as they were picking him up, I would say the chopper was probably hovering about maybe about 50, 75 feet, and the cable broke, and then we watched this guy fall back.
He was blown in half, basically. One leg, one arm, half his chest, half his face were gone. And I went down to see him. I guess it was about the 3rd day. He lived for 7 days like that. And he looked at me with the one eye that he had left.
I seen other guys that from behind, from their back of their skull back, they had their hair, they looked normal people. But as soon as you turned them over, they didn't have no face.
We were in Bammy Toohey, and we had to bring some guys out. You know, pieces, just, you know, a leg, shit like that. And we got them back to the base, and they were going to bring ambulances down because we had a medevac and medical unit right there. And they brought a dump truck down. Oh, shit.
To make you angry?
Yeah, made us load the... Shit.
There was no doubt in my mind that I wasn't going to get out of there. There was no way they could come in and get us out. So if you get hit, you were probably going to be dead.
80% of the guys that we lost, I couldn't have done anything about that anyway because they were shots to the head where they died instantly.
We were hit at the same time, and Bobby was probably about 20 meters from me, and we both hit booby traps at about the same time. And we were medevac to Da Nang and spent the 3 days in the hospital, and he was far worse than I, and I didn't know what happened to him. And then as they were medevacing us to Japan, I saw him again, and it amputated both of his legs, and he was still kind of delirious and stuff. And we stayed together for a week, and then he died in Japan. And I remember being sort of shocked at that, because you don't die in Japan. You die in Nam.
They would always fly these people off, so you never knew if they made it or if they died.
The old story about the numbers, the body count, it was very real. I mean, some mornings later on, after I'd been there for a while, there are mornings that after contact we couldn't find anything. It was just rage. Wanted to get into any kind of engagement to get them.
I mean, we looked at 11 tanks coming in, as wiped our whole camp out. There was 400 and some odd in that camp. They took 214 of them and just chewed them up like they were nothing. 15 of us backdoored the camp, blew the food gas and went out the back door on them, ran like hell for Quezon. I suppose I could relate to survivor's guilt pretty damn easy.
You know yourself in the most profound way because you can get to look at your soul, and in no other experience I can think of that you ever do what Dorian Gray did with his painting. You get to really see your soul in all its ugliness and all its beauty, and I think war does that.
The last scene of Vietnam, of the bush I had, was out of the rear end of a chopper, like that, as the gate, you know, as the ramp lowered up, and Bobby and I were laying in the belly of the ship, and I saw my squad like a picture postcard, you know, as they were framed from inside the ship.
Could Bobby talk at that?
And I was screaming and stuff. But I saw my squad out there, you know, waving, and that's the last I saw of some of them. And so I almost immediately began to miss them, because I knew somewhere in here that I probably wouldn't see them again.
I came back so fast. I mean, I felt like I was like facts back here. You know, it was like one day I was in the fields in Vietnam, and 36 hours later I was at my mother's kitchen table.
I met some people I knew in high school, and I went to talk to them, and they turned away from me. One fellow I knew wouldn't even shake my hand, so we left the bowling alley. And the next day, I was walking around the streets of this one small town, not too, some 10 miles or so from where my parents lived, and people were yelling things out their cars at me. And I went into a store and bought some regular clothes and put my uniform in the bag and stopped thinking about the Army.
My friends were no longer my friends. They were strange. Asking how many people I killed. Did I shoot women? Did I shoot kids? How good the drugs were over there.
The war protest was on, so they would barricade the doors and stuff, and you couldn't get into class. I still had my Army crew cut, so everybody knew I was a GI.
And we tended to congregate together. One, we were a little bit older than our generational peers. And obviously the experience was such, and the political climate was such, that we really weren't interfacing very well with our peers.
At first I was bitter about it, and then later on I found out, hell, they didn't know what they were protesting. They were right, they were protesting the war. That's okay. Not the warrior, but it felt like that.
I come home late at night, I'm watching television, I see these guys standing shoulder to shoulder firing M14s, and I think it's Vietnam, and I say, you better spread out, one heat tab is going to get you all, Well, it's Kent State. I couldn't believe it.
This summer I hear the drumming, forget in Ohio, forget in Ohio, forget in Ohio.
At first, I had a great deal of trouble breathing. I'd get moments when I couldn't breathe, and I'd drink a lot at that point. My first month or so home, all I did was drink. That's all I could do to relax enough to breathe.
I'd scare everyone I was with, especially if I got drunk. I'd go into this jungle kind of thing. I wasn't going to hurt anybody. I knew I wouldn't hurt them, but I did, just by screaming and getting into that, yelling over the top of choppers.
I got married 3 times in 16 months. I didn't bother to divorce the first 2 until after I'd been married to the 3rd one. Yeah, relationships were the shits for me. I didn't care. I mean, I really didn't. It was my way or the highway.
I found myself getting more irritable and threatening myself. Didn't know what I was going to do to my kids or my family.
A lot of times I thought the rage had a lot of good basis, things that my wife had done wrong or something like this, and a lot of times nothing would set it off.
It's your attitude, your mood changes, the way your mood swings on a drop of a dime, where you can be, you know, Mr. Nice Guy one day and you know, and be Rambo the next moment and ready to take everybody on and do something and think about violent things, how you're going to take them out.
I didn't want to give force to the anger that I felt because it was like an all-consuming anger. If it ever got out, I thought I would implode and I would destroy anything that was around me.
I just totally fell apart. I laid down next to the bed and couldn't move for 3 days.
Were you crying?
Yes, I just laid there and cried, read the Bible.
I had a new baby and no job, and I was ready to do it. I was ready to buy the farm.
With the depression I was going into, I knew that if I didn't get help, I would either kill them or they would kill me.
When I first went to the vet center, I told him I was okay, you know. It was the other people that had a problem. But I guess he knew better than me that, you know, my symptoms, he knew that I had post-traumatic stress.
And they had a walk-in group. It was just, you guys come in and need some help, sit down and talk with us for a little bit.
I almost cried when the first time I met some of the Vietnam veterans here in Denver, and they said, "Welcome home." That was the first time that I'd heard "Welcome home" after coming from the service.
But they were telling stories, and it was like they were crawling inside of me telling my story. See, I thought all this stuff that was going on inside of me was me and nobody else, and I wasn't about to tell anybody else. And here are these guys opening up.
You know, the things what these guys were saying is like a carbon copy of the exact same things that I would do. Not want to be around people, you know, didn't want to go to parties, spent half my time in the garage.
For a long time, it was just somebody chasing me, that kind of stuff, you know. I'd get flashbacks of, you know, the body bag shit.
My dreams are more vivid, and I do have some flashbacks or think about Nam or a certain situation. And it's going through the jungle or in a situation where I can't do nothing. I feel helpless.
I was working with an officer as his radio operator, and he and I were to go out on an ambush one night. That was during the day. And he instructed me to stay at camp. And he went out by himself, and he got killed on that ambush. And the guilt feelings and the shame that were associated with that incident took a long time to get over with. It just got buried. At the time that he got killed, I remember my thought was, better him than me.
The other guy would say, I went in your place. You owe me.
The fear is that if I start to cry, I'm never going to stop. And if I start grieving, I'm going to lose control.
The one thing that brought that up was when I had to write a letter to this lieutenant that was killed with us. And in that letter, I thanked him for allowing me to live so I could have my son.
I think the sad thing about this is with other people, that other vets that don't think they have a problem are passing the problem on to their kids and their family. I think they end up getting post-traumatic stress from the experience that you're putting them through.
And I think once I understood that and got back in touch with my emotions and what Vietnam had cost me and how much it hurt, and that it was okay to experience that pain, and it was okay to say, geez, I'm sorry this happened to me. And God knows I was sorry that it happened to everybody else, but I could never say I felt sorry for me.
It's, it hurts, because I realize now what an asshole I was and impossible to have lived with, all the stuff I put her through, all the mood changes I went through, and she couldn't understand. These people got to go see help, because they are destroying the most important thing, and it's the people that they love.
My son didn't know that what was going on, but one day he came up and just out of the clear blue sky, he said, Dad, I'm glad you didn't die in the war. And that's the best thing I've ever heard in my life.
You're a one-dimensional person at best without an emotional component. I mean, that gives us our humanity, is our ability to be sensitive, to feel, to have compassion, to shut those feelings down and be an intellect, or even not an intellect. We have no value as human beings.
You know, emotion is a language that we forgot in Vietnam. It cost us that lingual ability, the ability to show our emotions. Because in an effort to save ourselves, we had to shut down emotionally to survive. I think any combat person has to. And the process of shutting down didn't open back up after Vietnam. And so I continued, like so many veterans, continued to be shut down emotionally. It makes it hard on relationships. It makes it hard on jobs. It makes you isolated.
And if it wasn't for my wife and my boss and some close friends that believed in me, you know, I wouldn't be where I'm at now. And I take my hat up to them, because they suffered right along with you. And you don't think they do, but they do.
I'm glad to be alive. It's better to be vertical than horizontal. As long as I'm breathing in and out, I feel pretty damn good. I appreciate life. I'm a more tolerant person. I've got maybe that longer view that we talked about, the Oriental, the Asian people have, that thousands of years of culture and history. I feel that maybe I absorbed some of that. If it takes 1,000,000 years, then we're just getting started.
It hurt to remember not only the people that died when I was there, but all those names up on the wall.
It's hard walking along that wall and putting your hands on people's names that you knew. That's difficult. I don't know, it was like, how come you're not here? You know, what the hell am I doing looking at your name on here? I look at the names of a lot of people on that wall.
And we walked down to the end of the wall, and there was this statue. Statue of 3 soldiers. And I stood there for about 45 minutes without moving. And that was the first time I cried. And I've been back twice since, and it still has an effect.
I've come to realize that their suffering ended with Vietnam, and looking back on it, I don't think they wanted that for us. They want us to be happy and lead full lives.
Each time I go back, it's harder, because I go back and I look up a lot of the names, and I think when you find the names and you leave, you think about someone that you want to look up again, but each time it's harder and harder.
A lot of the names I can't remember, but the faces are there. So I go to the wall, all you see is names. And I knew a lot of guys as Church, Pooch, Kentucky, nicknames. And it's frustrating because you don't remember the names.
The 58,000 names on the wall are not all the casualties. The amount of suicide and death by drug abuse and alcohol abuse for the vets has more than doubled that number. That's a shame that goes along with Vietnam. It's a price that we're still paying as a nation.
I am not sorry that I went to Vietnam. I'll never apologize for going to Vietnam, and I'll never apologize for what my activities were in Vietnam. I can't afford to apologize for that.
I don't know who I would be if it wasn't for Vietnam. I don't dwell on it. I don't focus on it so much, but it's such an integral part of who I am that I can't imagine me without Vietnam.
Old G.I. Joe never looked back, and that's the way I am. Joe fought on the Midway. I fought in Da Nang. And the body bags still haunt me, and the hearts that beat no more, and the boys that dreamed of flying kneeling in the chopper doors. I still dream about Tui Wa, and sometimes about Japan, and I wake at night in the cold sweat, and I wonder where I am. See, I've been to hell and back again, and I kept a bloody score. And deep inside, I'm sorry about that. Some say we lost the war. And since Vietnam, I've tried to find a way to get back home. I've been a whiskey drugged out refugee in the greatest country known. And the streets are cold and lonely in this homeless Super Bowl. And the medals that they gave me weigh heavy on my soul. And I don't ask for pity, and I don't care where you stand. Notches on an M16 sure don't make a man. I got nothing against old Charlie. He was just like me. But I'm proud to be an American in the home of the brave and the free. So to all the boys in uniform and the men behind the gun, to the soldiers in the foreign land far away from home, to the boys that left in the morning and returned as men at night, God bless you all. Stand up tall. You know you earned the right.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Vietnam Veterans of America, Denver chapter.